Hello and welcome to the first episode of Photo Espresso. Today we talk about aerial photography with three of the most experienced people in the business. It's Jason Hawks, Alex McLean and Rafael Rivera on our first episode of Photo Espresso with Smips TV.
Smips TV. Webcasts for people with a passion. Live connectivity for Photo Espresso is provided by ThinkTel. Switch without interruption to a cost-effective IP-based telephone service at thinktel.net. Hosting for the Flying Lap is brought to you by Webcore Labs. Host your own website at webcorelabs.com. This is episode 1 for December 2nd, 2010, Aerial Photography.
Hello everyone and welcome to our first episode of Photo Espresso, a brand new show that we have now added to our roster of shows at Smips TV, specifically extending our reach in terms of the great base of fans we have already in the photography area with Fine Art Photography Weekly. Photo Espresso is going to be aimed much wider and higher in terms of covering all kinds of photography around the world, from travel to commercial photography, from fine art in parts in the hobby areas to a special topic, for instance, we have today, which is aerial photography. We have three fantastic guests from around the world today. One of them is Rafael Rivera. Hello, Rafael. How are you doing? He's from San Diego, California. How is the weather there?
Oh, it's beautiful always.
Oh, you make me jealous because we sit
Blue
here.
skies.
We sit here at minus 15 Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's quite different from what you guys have there, I'm sure. And then, of course, we have Alex McLean from Lincoln, Massachusetts. Hello, Alex. How are you doing today?
Hi, Peter. Good.
I assume the weather is better everywhere than it is here, so I'm not going to continue asking about it.
Crisp and clear here.
Wonderful. And then we have Jason Hawks from the UK. Hello, Jason. How are you doing?
Hey, Peter. I'm very good, thanks.
Good. It's great to have you all on, and we'll have. I'm sure we'll have a great fun episode today, talking about your special. I don't know if it's a niche, but area of photography. Let's have a couple of pictures from each of you first, and see what you guys are actually doing. Here's the first image from Rafael, and he focuses on the area that he lives in. And maybe Rafael, you can give us a quick background where this image is from.
All right, this one was actually when I was living in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
I was there for a year, and this is a picture of, it's called Punta Sam. It's in Cancun.
Okay.
That's a hotel zone in Cancun.
Wonderful. And you have a special technique how you do aerial photography, which I think is quite unusual. So let us know what you do, because you don't take your images as a single shot, which is strange, I found, but very successful, obviously. So let us know how this works.
Well, it's a way of making really large format, high resolution pictures with the digital cameras. I take many photos and then piece them together to make one composition.
Okay, and you do that out of a helicopter, right?
Yeah, so hovering out of a helicopter.
Wow, it's crazy. And I thought that would never be possible because of the perspective change. But we'll get to that, back to that in just a few minutes when we talk about each of yours techniques. Let's talk. Have a quick look at Alex's work. Let me find a very one of the. There's so many good shots that it's really difficult to decide which ones we want to look at first. But there's one image here. View. There we go. Let's have a look at this, which is an interesting take on housing, I guess. Alex, I assume you take your shots in one shot, or and not apply the stitching technique, hey?
No, that was actually taken with a film camera.
Okay.
A while back.
Okay, and where is this?
That is Somerville, Mass. It was actually taken from a helicopter. I do most of my work from an airplane.
Okay.
And that's a streetcar suburb of Boston.
Yeah. There's another image here, which is a more industrial environment, I guess, or no, it's actually a building environment where you can see how housing is built almost in a. It's like a time. Well, it's not a time lapse, but you can see sort of finished houses in the front, and then just gantries and construction areas in the back. Quite interesting.
Right. This is out in Las Vegas area during the explosive growth of 2005.
Yeah.
And just putting up housing incredibly fast. So that particular image really showed the assembly line sequencing of the building, going from the graded platted lots to the foundation slab, the framing. Yeah, and with someone living in the house up in the front left corner there.
Wow!
So it was a pretty good, give a pretty good idea of just how fast the growth was going on.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it sort of also captures that cookie cutter sort of production production. What did you call it? Production line or assembly line?
Yeah, it's assembly line.
Yeah, that's really
production housing though.
Right.
And really not much thought given into to what the neighborhood or the community would be like.
Yeah, it's interesting as an image, but it's a bit sad place to live, I guess.
It's a commentary.
Yeah, it is. All right, and then of course, let's have a look at Jason's work here. There is, Jason does work that's, I think very graphical in many ways. Here's a good example. Is that typical for your work? Let me pull it up. Here we go.
Yeah, this is pretty typical of the kind of stuff I shoot. I'd shoot all day long if my clients would let me.
Okay.
But I guess quite a lot of my clients I don't shoot that kind of work for. But that was for a book I did for the BBC. I think a couple of years ago we did a book of Britain from above.
Okay.
We shot the whole of Britain, and that's just the kind of thing I like to. That's the kind of thing you don't know it's there till you just happen to go flying above it. You just happen to see a nice graphic pattern of these people in these swimming pools. So.
Yeah. And I heard in our short talk before the show that Alex, he's flying himself, actually, I think with a fixed wing, right, Alex?
That's correct.
Okay, so what, Jason, how do you shoot? Are you shooting out of helicopters or fixed wings?
No, it's all from helicopters. I don't. I shoot out of helicopters, mostly twin stars, twin squirrels, we call them in the UK.
Oh, okay.
That's my preferred. They're quite expensive, but if I can shoot in that's a kind of machine I want to shoot in all the time, I guess.
Twin squirrels is a good term. I like that one. And Raphael had a good funny note there when Alex just asked him before if he's flying himself. He says no, he's renting the helicopters, and they usually come with pilots. So that's funny. So what got all of you into aerial photography? Is it the buzz of flying that got you into it, the interest of flying, or is it really was the artistic sort of urge to find a different angle come first? Who wants to start on that one?
Well, I'll go first. For myself, I don't actually like flying that much. If I didn't have to fly, to be honest, I don't think I would bother. But I went flying. I've been doing it for about 20 years, and I went flying. I studied photography at college, and I happened to go flying one day in a microlight, and I didn't think the flight was that amazing, but what I did think was amazing was all the graphic patterns you can see, and I started doing it literally about a month afterwards. I went and bought a microlight. I had to sell it immediately because it wasn't a very good aircraft to shoot from, but I started shooting from helicopters from then on. But for me, it's just the patterns you can see rather than the actual flying.
Wow, interesting. And Alex, how about you?
I learned when I was in architecture school, and I was interested in doing the photography for site analysis purposes, and seeing landscapes at a larger scale. And I had a very good friend who ran a camp, a flying camp down in Florida. His uncle had the biggest flight school in the country, and so I went down there as a counselor while I was in architecture school and learned how to fly.
Yeah.
And then started shooting shortly after that.
Yeah, and then did you get into flying heavily yourself right away with your own plane, or how did you progress from there?
Oh, I got I got a NEA grant, a National Endowment of the Arts grant, in I think about 1976, and went out and bought a Cessna 172, and I had that for a number of years doing work out of, and then a 182, which was a little bit faster and a bigger plane, and then about 3 years ago, I switched to this light sport aircraft, which is carbon technology. It only weighs 800 pounds. It went as fast as my 182, but it also flies a lot slower, and it doesn't have a strut, so I don't have to deal with the strut. Mm-hmm. So I find it's a great platform for shooting out of. Wow.
And I have an interesting question that just comes to my mind is, drinking and driving is not allowed. And of course, now cell phones while driving are getting critical. So how is it, is it safe to fly and shoot at the same time? Or do you have an autopilot in that case?
Well, the planes are all trimmed up so they'll fly straight and level.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that works for you. I find myself to be very alert when I'm photographing and flying at the same time. It is three-dimensional space.
Yeah.
So it's not anything like trying to shoot out of a car and drive, or text out of a car and drive.
Right.
So in that respect, it's I think it's fairly safe. I'm talking to, if I'm in an urban area, working with a flight controller who's looking after you in the sense of other traffic in the airspace. And
Alex, can you hear me? It's Jason.
Yeah, can you hear me? Who's this?
Yeah, I was just wondering whether you're shooting out the door, but you're flying with the door off, presumably, are you? Or how do you actually shoot out of it?
No, I'm actually. The Cessna, you might be familiar, has a fairly big window. It's about 2.5 feet by 1.5 feet. It's hinged along the top, and it just swings open, and the airstream holds the window open. So you have a fairly good window. My new plane, I do not like the window as much as the 182 window, but it's workable.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm you basically keep the camera out of the slipstream, but you're shooting through an open window.
Okay.
But you're I mean, a lot of your pictures are looking quite almost, well, not completely vertically, but almost vertically. So are you having to put the are you having to put it on a tight angle when you're coming around to get the images like that?
Yeah, for most of the verticals, what I do is usually put the plane in a 45-degree angle bank the camera 45 degrees in the plane. You're looking straight down.
Yeah,
the trick to it is that when you put a plane into a bank, it's in a turn. So you have to sort of lead and anticipate, getting a shot so it's framed.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds a lot more tricky than everybody else who just sits in the back of the helicopter and takes their snaps.
Is your camera mounted onto something?
No, I hand hold everything.
Handheld. Okay.
Yeah.
Fast shutter speed?
Yeah, I'd shoot between usually 1,000 and 1,600.
Okay.
How about you guys? What are you shooting at?
I do about a 400th of a second.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You use a stabilizer, Raphael?
What's that?
Do you use a gyro stabilizer or anything?
No, it's all handheld. 400 of a second.
Well, you can put a stabilizer under the camera. Yeah. I often use that, especially in low light.
There's for our audience, there's a gyro stabilizer there's a gyroscope basically in a casing that you can put under the camera, just like a tripod under the camera. It gives you the advantage that you can hold the camera, still freehold it and move it around, but the gyro gives it a strong sort of stabilization and direction, so it takes out smaller movements and vibration, right, Alex?
Right. I find it best for just the fine vibration of any tremor that's in the plane.
Right.
I'll have to try one of those.
Yeah, they're really cool.
They're pretty good. Ken Lab is the producer of most of them.
Yeah.
That I know of.
And so let's get into what your approach is to taking pictures. Maybe Raphael should start this one off, because he's sort of the stranger in the pack, if you like, but he really creates some fascinating imagery that I thought wasn't really possible. Raphael, with your images, you say you hover over a certain area that you select for your artistic work, and then you take hundreds of pictures sometimes, and then stitch them together later. And why this is special, if for anyone that hasn't tried this before, the stitching in general from a tripod, it's fairly simple comparatively. It still works, but it's fairly simple. You know, the perspective that he's shooting from changes, of course, with the helicopter moving even ever so slightly. And so that means that you know, you get scenes where you can perfectly line up the segments of the image into the bigger whole as an image. So here is a good example image, I think, that's probably, hopefully I'm getting this one right this time, from your area, Raphael. Explain us a little bit how you got the idea, how you select your sites, and then how you go about, you know, putting this together.
Well, I study the pictures in Google Earth. And I usually look for areas of land that are sticking out, because I know that wide-angle shots really exaggerate the foreground and really pull things forward. And so I'm looking at composition on a grander scale for not so much looking at the small little details that are on the ground, but what the land forms, the whole topography.
Okay. Christy just told me that we have a YouTube video of this, I think. Let me see if I can pull this up and get it for our audience. Here we go. Okay. And it should be coming up in just a second.
Yeah, you don't have to put the music on it.
Yeah. Here's the video. So maybe you can comment on this.
Okay, so as it goes, well, this is in Cancun. This is to give you an idea of the scale of what the pictures would be like printed large. This is in Tulum. These are the Mayan ruins.
Yeah.
In the Yucatan.
Beautiful.
This is to give you an idea. This is just a test from a rooftop to give you an idea of the process.
Wow.
This is an unpieced. This is in Laguna Beach.
Yeah.
And this is what it looks like as I'm putting it together in screenshots.
Nice.
So as you can see,
how long does that process go when we work on that?
That there is showing about a month's worth of work.
Wow.
But I'm actually getting much better and faster at putting all of these together. This is another piece from Laguna Beach. This is one I never finished because it was really complicated. The helicopter didn't stay that steady.
Yeah.
But this is to give you an idea of the resolution, see how closely I will zoom into these guys here playing bocce ball or something.
Beautiful. And I'm amazed. I mean, of course, you get huge resolution, but I'm amazed that you're actually capable of stitching those together so seamlessly. I mean, you really can't, in the final product, you can't see any seams, or even like, how do you adjust, for instance, if there's light, like slight exposure changes or light changes, because you've seen in the individual patches that they've been quite, there has been quite a bit of change often in the exposure, right?
Yeah. The way I deal with that, I shoot raw.
Yeah.
And so it gives me a little bit of room to play with the exposure.
Right.
And that's it.
And you just do it in the raw converter, or later in Photoshop?
In raw converter, I work in 16-bit as much as I can.
Right.
And for adjusting exposure and stuff.
Wow. Yeah. Cool.
It's never that far off the exposure if I have the sun behind me.
Mm-hmm. And then you just use individual perspective changes in Photoshop to adjust for any perspective change, like just basically pulling and pushing images around until they fit.
Yeah, skewing. I use the warp tool a lot.
Yeah.
And there's just, it's kind of hard to notice because what you're seeing is a picture that's complete.
Right.
When somebody looks at one of my pictures, there's really no reason to to tear it apart, because
Right.
what they're looking at is a whole,
Yeah.
is a picture as a whole. So I can't say that everything in there is perfect, but there's no reason for anyone to question it because they really haven't seen it from that perspective. So what do you really know?
Yeah. Right. Cool. Super cool. I like that. I don't know. Okay. It's going through here. You can see like.
So yeah, this is just to give you an idea of the resolution.
Right.
And sometimes I've found what people really like is that they like to point out their houses and their places of interest. This is a neighborhood in San Diego called Wind and Sea Beach.
Mhm.
It's really popular for surfers. And these two surfers that you see right there, I actually met them afterwards. They recognize themselves.
Wow. And so you mostly sell or aim your work to sell as art and to display as art.
Yeah, mostly for art, but I have had some pretty big sales with like Best Western in by the sea. It's a hotel over here.
Yeah.
That has them in every room.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had a deal with Southwest Airlines where they had 500 of my pictures around in 500 terminals around the country.
Nice, beautiful.
So it's just, they found me on the internet and they offered me some money and I said yes. That's it.
Smart thing to say.
I can't believe that.
Smart thing to say.
So I think it's something that slowly it'll grow and build and exponentially just grow.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for sharing this. The video is great to illustrate what you are actually doing, so I love it.
It's still a work in process, and it's not anything that has been perfected yet.
Well, you're doing
But
pretty good.
I make do with whatever I get. I don't get a chance to fly in a helicopter all the time.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of redos.
Yeah.
So I just have to make do with what I have.
Yeah. Well, you're just a little bit too modest, I think, because I think you're really doing it's exceptional idea, and you're doing great work there. Let's talk a little bit more about where this is going to go, and please, you guys, interrupt, and if you have questions, jump on each other and just have fun having a good conversation between people that do a similar subject, but in very different ways, I think.
Raphael, I was actually going to ask you, what is the size of those images at the end? They must be absolutely enormous. The file size. What do you end up with?
They're usually about 300 megapixels. I usually limit it to about 30,000 pixels in width, and they're at about like between 10 or 12,000 pixels high.
Right. Oh, I thought it was going to be like a terabyte or something crazy, but not that large.
I was thinking that way too.
Not yet, but it's on its way.
And how large do you print them, Raphael?
How large?
I saw one with the people in front of it, but how large have you actually printed them?
The biggest I printed is 12 feet wide. Is the biggest print that I have.
Right.
So that's about 4 meters for anyone in Europe watching. 4 meters by probably 1.5 meters, I would guess, in a panoramic style. So it's 12 feet by what, 4 feet or 6 feet or something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. They're ginormous and they're beautiful. So
and would those be inkjet prints then?
Yeah, they're inkjet prints.
Yeah, and then Raphael, do you probably need quite a bit of light to get enough? You said you have shutter speed about 400, and you get of course ISO as low as possible to remove noise. But so are you usually choosing like midday or like bright daytime to do your images, or is there any specific time in the day where the sun and the angles are best for what you're doing?
Yeah, it depends on the time of year. In the winter here, we don't really get the sun directly in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to have the sun behind me as much as I can.
Okay, so to avoid any angle shadows?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That makes sense.
And Raphael, how long does it take you to make one picture? How long are you actually shooting for from the helicopter to assemble, to take one image?
In one spot, it depends on how well the helicopter pilot is able to stay still.
Yeah.
Sometimes if the wind doesn't allow us, we have to like circle around and try to come around to the same spot. But it's never the same spot. Exactly.
But be 5 or 10 minutes or
Sometimes I
long.
could do between 5 or 10 minutes if it
Yeah.
goes really well, if I shoot fast enough, and if the guy
Yeah.
if he's steady enough.
Yeah, and then how do you
That's-
keep track of when you're panning along and then doing another row? Or
Yeah.
what's your technique that way?
Yeah, I just start on top and pan, and then go to the bottom and just try to overlap as much as I can.
Yeah.
And then I go and do it again, and then I do it again, and try to make sure that I have enough pictures to choose from.
Yeah, that's amazing. I did a similar shoot for that for a few years ago. We did an advert for Smirnoff through the ad agency JWT in London, and we spent about I think we spent about 4 or 5 days photographing London again and again and again. And in the end, they had to put it together. We made an advert where they made the River Thames straight. Obviously, at the minute, in reality, it curves round and round London. But we did this ad, and it was similar to that. But they did it up as a great big billboards all over London. It looked pretty good.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think.
So you stitched it together?
Yeah, well, not me personally, but we had an operator do it. I think it took him about 8 days to stitch the whole thing together. We used I think he did it from about 50 photographs in the end, but we spent a long time shooting it. It was a nice job. We spent we did about 3 or 4 days and about 3 hours a day we were photographing it.
And that's just for one shot, for one picture?
Yeah, it was for an ad campaign for
one. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they had good budgets, so it's good.
Lots of flying time there. Great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so before we get to more technical stuff, let's look at Alex a little bit more, and then of course at Jason. Alex, what is your main target? Are you shooting for clients mostly, or for art? Or for your own artistic work? Where are you at right now with your photography?
Well, I welcome both. I like doing commercial projects, and I'm always shooting for myself on the side. If I see things that are of interest, I won't hesitate to, try to capture those shots.
Mm-hmm.
This was actually out in Raphael's area, going from San Diego up to LA, coming across these planted flower fields.
Beautiful, yeah.
Carlsbad.
It's just like it's almost like it reminds me of a color checker or a color patch, that you use in printing. Pantone,
right.
A color, what do they call, fan or something like that. It's almost like a man-made object. In a sense, it's field, so it is sort of man-made, but it still has a natural elements to it, of course, and this perspective you never get as a normal observer. So it's beautiful. It's great stuff. And so, Alex, do you go out to how do you decide when to go photographing, when to take your plane? When you have, is it just basically, I feel good today, weather is great, let's take a ride with the plane and take the camera with me? Or is it more planning and elaborate and more research, maybe through Google Earth or Google Maps? Or how do you go about it?
I'm usually working on a project, and for instance, can't remember what I was doing for that for those particular photographs.
Yeah.
I think I was on my own.
Yeah.
For that, but if I'm like doing a project in New Orleans and flying my plane south, I'll figure out a good route that will take me by some interesting things, such as hilltop mining in West Virginia and other things of that nature, and we'll photograph en route to take advantage of that. And then, when I get to New Orleans, I'll be working on the project at hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here is an interesting picture of a sort of a airplane junkyard, I guess. Probably somewhere in the desert, I would guess.
That's right. That is in Tucson, Arizona. I was flying back from the West Coast, following the U.S.-Mexican border. Right. And deviated up to Tucson, and I knew about the Boneyard, which is a big military Air Force base where they mothball planes, and that was actually an interesting shot because it was part of the SALT II treaty, where they were decommissioning B-52 bombers. And so if you look at the picture, you can see the ones in the bottom foreground there are chopped into 4 pieces, and the Russian satellites go over and verify the destruction, and then they're parted out for scrap metal.
Right.
And so the ones on top are just waiting to be destroyed.
Wow.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's cool.